Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we vocalize our picks for the most memorable, effective, and iconic uses of celebrity voices in commercials and marketing.
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, where we simplify the world of marketing for humans. I'm Shad Conley, and with me is my co-host, Patrick Jever. So Patrick, let me throw a little hypothetical at you. An agency comes to your door, knock, knock. They've been listening to the podcast and they love your voice. Smooth like butter. They've got 3 clients who are interested in bringing you on board for big money. Some sweet cheddar as the voice in all their commercials. But you can only choose one. You know, there's some overlap in the work. The time commitment's too much. You can't do them all. Your choices are the Squatty Potty, a stool that helps your poo come out better, a tongue cat brush. This is a device you put in your mouth and use to brush your cat. And third choice, a toe wart remover. This is a gel that penetrates and removes warts.
Oh.
Which do you choose?
Of course you're going to know I'm picking Squatty Potty on this.
I mean, do you have a reason?
Just check this out. The number one way to number 2.
Oh, yeah. That's velvet.
Right?
That's gold.
Squatty Potty straightens your colon so you can eliminate the way nature intended. Doesn't it feel smooth? Almost like you want to sit on the Squatty Potty, right?
Well, I do, because once you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that is how nature wants it done.
Let me just say, I had to look up the tongue cat brush, which is actually called the Licky. Did you see that?
I did not see the name, the Licky.
It's called the Licky. It says, Licky is a soft silicone brush you can hold in your mouth to lick your cat, like a mama cat grooms her kittens. Licky is designed to feel pleasurable to your cat's sensitive skin.
In addition to grooming, massaging, and bathing your cat, it can also be used to bond with your cat by licking him. Of course, it can be used on other small animals and dogs too.
So weird.
Something
weird.
I had never seen before.
You know it's going somewhere when they start offering it in glow in the dark.
If it hasn't already, it'll probably catch on. I don't want to judge people. I think, if this is something that gives people comfort, helps them to bond with their animals, brings them joy, so be it.
Yeah, we try to remain relatively positive on this podcast. And let me tell you, I'm positive I would never do the voiceover for that.
I'll do anything. I'm a shield for the money.
Yeah.
I'll do them all. I'll be like, I lick my cat every night. And they'll be like, tell them how you put on the cat tongue thing. And I'll be like, what are you talking about? What cat tongue?
They're like, the Licky. And you're like, there's a product for this?
Oh, thank God. Well, in case you didn't figure it out yet, and I can understand why, today we're talking about voiceovers. More specifically, celebrity voiceovers. I think that's an important clarification here. Celebrity voiceovers.
Because we should say there's a lot of people that do voiceover. There's a lot of professionals out there doing voiceover work, and they're very good. We thought it would make the most sense because most people know celebrities. They can relate because they might know a celebrity from a movie or whatever, that we just sort of focus on them in this episode. Think Morgan Freeman. You heard Morgan Freeman's voice. You could probably hear it right now. Mm-hmm. Even as I say his name, he's done voiceover work.
Yeah, it's almost a separate thing. With the celebrity, it's something you're gravitating towards, someone you know, something designed to stand out. Whereas with other voiceover professionals, the idea is it's natural. It's smooth. You almost don't notice it's there. You're just more taking in the message. That's kind of what their job is. So it's kind of a very different thing, what we're talking about here today. Yeah.
So we each are going to share 2 picks of celebrity voiceovers we think are great. Now, these are just personal selections. Obviously they're a little subjective to what we think. There's a lot out there, and you might have one that and remember, can recall right now and you're like, oh, that's a great one.
It's got to be that one.
Yeah. This is the point of this episode, is that there are just those voices, those very iconic voices that we know that connect with us in some way. And we're going to be sharing our picks for that.
Yeah. So you ready to dive right in? Do you want to talk at all about how you chose the two you're going to talk about? Did you have any method to your madness? How did you go into this? How did you approach it?
In this case, I did have two criteria. Number one, it had to be an established VO for the brand, meaning that through consistency and longevity, you can't remember a time before this voiceover voiced the brand. And then number two, the VO, the voiceover, has to be very recognizable. You don't necessarily have to know the person's name, but you recognize the voice, that the person is famous in some way. You're like, I feel like I know that voice, which is what all celebrity voiceovers are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be connecting with people who identify with that actor.
Yeah, I think that's good criteria. I don't know if I thought about that specifically, but I think that holds true for kind of what I picked and how I picked them, looking for that longevity and that some sort of celebrity or status, obviously someone that's, if not worldwide known, somebody that's at least known or you would put in this kind of elevated air. I think a final piece of that, I think the voice should speak to and kind of capture the audience the brand is trying to talk to. That should kind of reflect that in like either who the person is or, you know, even the sound of that voice. So I kind of went into it with a different way than I sometimes go into these lists. I kind of worked backwards where I was like, what are the first voices I immediately think of? From there, just went and looked around and said, is there anybody I'm missing that I have to be like, I'll kick myself if I didn't have them, you know, on my list or throw out there. And so it's pretty organic for me in that way. But even when I went through and looked, I kind of stuck with who I had to begin with. So that's kind of a unique approach or something different for me. But I'll be interested to see as we kind of talk through these if we have any overlap.
Yeah, there could be some overlap, but I don't think there will be.
No, you don't think so?
I just don't.
No, don't see it, huh?
I mean, maybe. I think you'll appreciate mine, but I don't know if you'll pick mine.
I appreciate the work you put in.
All right. So my number one pick, Ving Rhames from Arby's.
This is USDA Choice Top Round Angus Steak. On a sandwich, Arby's, we have the meats.
We have the meats.
Excellent.
So you know Ving Rhames from Pulp Fiction and almost all of the Mission Impossible movies. And he's been doing the We Have the Meats since 2014. It hits all my criteria. You know his voice from something. You don't necessarily always know. And you're talking about almost 10 years of him voicing We Have the Meats. You can't hear an Arby's commercial without hearing that voice in your head. That's my first choice. What do you think of that?
I really like that one. That was a good one. That's one I thought of. And I had to nix it for my own personal bias, which was when I initially first heard it, thought it was James Earl Jones.
And that is a common misconception.
I think it's the way he says Arby's. There's like a James Earl Jonesian tone to it.
So let me ask you this. That's actually kind of a pro, right? If you think about it, James Earl Jones.
Another great voice.
Yeah, I mean, so you almost get the best of both worlds in that case.
So you're selling it as two celebrities for the price of one.
Yeah, kind of. If you're going the route of like not recognizing that it's Ving Rhames and you think it's James Earl Jones, then yeah, you know.
Yeah. Well, let me take you from one deep, reassuring voice to another.
Okay.
I'm talking about Dennis Haysbert for Allstate Insurance.
1931 was not exactly a great year to start a business, but that's when Allstate opened its doors. And through the 12 recessions since, they've noticed that after the fears subside, a funny thing happens. People start enjoying the small things in life. home-cooked meal. Time with loved ones. Appreciating the things we do have, the things we can count on. It's back to basics. And the basics are good. Protect them. Put them in good hands.
Oh, yeah.
Voice of all states starting in 2003.
Yeah, that's a long time, dude. 20 years.
Not, the most famous of all actors. I think, if you ask a lot of people, he's not like a household name, but he's a working actor for a long time, a known quantity to some people, and I think very recognizable for his work with Allstate. Just having that, deep, authoritative voice, very trustworthy, very reliable. You believe what he's telling you. At the same time, he's sort of like calm and reassuring when he's talking about insurance. He's just like the perfect guy to bring in talking about Allstate. When I was thinking about voiceovers, that was the first deep voice that popped into my head.
I mean, I can picture his face right now, but I just can't think of like shows that he's been in.
Major League is Pedro Serrano.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's where I'm thinking of him from. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, me too. That's probably what I know him from the most, Enough people know his name around Hollywood, and part of that's due to these commercials and the popularity of them. And there's something about having that deep voice, right? That just speaks to you. Maybe you can just hear it at a different frequency, and you're like, this calms me. I can trust this guy. Relaxes the muscles.
At a cellular level. Right. All right. So my second pick, Tim Allen, Pure Michigan.
We can feel it. Our spirits rising with the sun, a warm breeze that thaws our soul. And we sure are ready. It's a new beginning. The beginning of walks on the beach along miles of endless coastline. Fishing lines and bare feet dangling into calm lakes made of glass. Hikes down well-worn trails among acres of lush, towering forests. Rounds of golf where more strokes only mean more time spent on breathtaking courses. And as much laughter on sun-kissed faces as there is splashing. Summer has returned, and not a moment too soon. So let's enjoy every moment of it in Pure Michigan.
You know him from Home Improvement, the television show, The Santa Claus, Toy Story, of course, is the voice of Buzz Lightyear, and one of my personal favorites, Galaxy Quest, which is kind of a parody, non-parody of Star Trek. Very good little sci-fi comedy. But Pure Michigan started in 2008. You got a long history of Tim Allen voicing Pure Michigan. Whether you know it or not, like I said, one of my criteria is you're like, I recognize that voice, but I don't necessarily know who that is. And then you're like, oh my God, it's Buzz Lightyear.
Familiar, rugged, outdoorsy, kind of matches the imagery you're seeing. This is a great pick. This was a honorable mention for me. It was really close when I was thinking about these. The one thing I love about it is like, it's a pure voiceover, across the board. And it's one, when I first heard it, and even for a long time, it was one of those ones where you can't quite, as you were talking about, can't quite place your finger on it. So you have to think about it for a little bit. You're like, I know that, but who is that? So your brain almost has to like churn a little bit to get there, which is, I think, a net positive for it, especially for something like, Michigan, where they want people to like kind of pass that around and think about that a little bit. Just watching him in what I've seen him in, Home Improvement or things, like peg him as a great voiceover guy. But when you hear the voice over the commercials, works really well.
To your point, he voices this really well. And I think there is an emotional connection that he has as a person to the state. And that shows through in the voiceover acting. You feel his passion for that state. You feel that through the voiceover, I think. That can go a long way, in addition to the fact that he's a celebrity.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think he's a great fit there. Also, another reflection with my final pick here, sort of deep, gravelly, masculine, rugged voice associated with, I would say, sort of a region of the country, sort of Western. I'm talking about the man Sam Elliott for Coors.
Legend has it, Rocky Mountain miners knew how to celebrate with get-togethers called banquets. Their beer, Coors, they called it banquet beer, brewed with Rocky Mountain water and only the best high country barley for a full-flavored taste. Savored by generations since 1873. Times have changed. Coors never will. Coors, the banquet beer.
I knew you were going to say that. As soon as you said gravelly, Western. Yeah.
Sounds like he's talking with maybe a mustache hanging over his face.
Yeah.
So this guy, Sam Elliott, he's your consummate cowboy. You think of him, you hear that voice, you're just like, this guy's a cowboy. He comes across, in that sort of authentic way. He's out there. He's talking about, usually, it's over these kind of Rocky Mountain images they're using in the marketing. So he's reinforcing this kind of idea of a beer you're drinking outdoors or something like that, something that's been around for a while, something, what it is, what the taste is, what you're getting. Sam Elliott's like the classic. And that's why his voice, I think, is just, it's pretty timeless and it's pretty effective in the way they use it in the marketing.
Yeah. He has almost like I would sort of compare him to like how people felt about the Marlboro Man. He's cool. He's like
laid back. You
feel like you would just hang out with this guy, right? And he'd be like telling you stories about the old West, even though that's,
not his time, but it seems like it's his time.
It seems like it should be his time. And he's playing in a lot of Westerns. So, but he has that distinction. And that's maybe what it is the distinction and the distinctiveness of his voice is just very timeless, I guess.
Yeah. And of course, played a cowboy narrator in The Big Lebowski. Yeah. So there's that kind of voice association there too. He's one of these guys, he's as much associated with his voice almost as he is with his presence. Kind of like a Morgan Freeman in that way, just kind of like stands out for that reason. So when you hear him, you're just like, there it is. Coors in a yellow can.
Yeah.
my terrible Sam Elliott.
Yeah, don't ever do that.
Yeah, I've been riding the horses all day. Now, time to kick back with the Coors like I do.
That was actually better. I like that.
It was good.
That was pretty good. Yeah.
Well, got to get my reps in.
You need a handlebar mustache now.
Yeah, you need a little something to flap in front and kind of catch the lighter octave notes
before they hit the mic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I see that.
Like a broom.
Yeah.
Then he comes in one day and he shaved his mustache and he's like, Coors, it's really good. Why do I sound like, what's happened to me?
Most people know him from a lot of different things, but so good in Tombstone.
Yeah. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think Sam Elliott.
Here's the two movies that come to mind. Tombstone, Roadhouse. Mm-hmm. I love him in Roadhouse. He didn't have a huge part, but man, he was so good as Sam Elliott in that.
Yeah, he plays a great Sam Elliott.
Yeah, my mom loves him. She's like, oh, he's a striking young fella.
What a man, that Sam Elliott. So we got a very strong group of older men here. Were there any other honorable mentions? Anybody else you thought about or, came close?
One of the ones that came up that I thought about was Morgan Freeman. He's done some visa work, but there were some problems in that for me because like a lot of the examples, they didn't do a great job presenting Morgan Freeman and his voice. I thought they could have been better.
I agree with that. I have the same experience when I was going back and watching them and I was like, you have this idea of Morgan Freeman and his voice. And then I watched them and I was underwhelmed in some way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of, it's a little bit of his voice and his pitch, but it's also a little bit of the cadence in which he speaks, the way in which he speaks that you recognize him.
Yeah.
And they don't use that cadence when they present the voiceover. And
how they use him is it's kind of like almost like fast and
yeah. And that's just not
quick
him.
and throwaway. And yeah,
if you really want to take advantage of it, I think you need to use some of the qualities that make his voice unique. And I just don't think they ever captured that in Visa.
Yeah. I also thought of Samuel L. Jackson for Capital One. What's in your wallet? What's in your wallet? You know, Samuel L. Jackson has a very powerful, grab your attention kind of voice to him. I also, you mentioned Tim Allen. He was the one that was I was closest to grabbing because I really like what he does. I also thought of Gene Hackman for Lowe's, which is a very subtle voice work that I didn't even realize was him for years. Before someone else kind of like took that over. Kind of similar to Tim Allen in that way. It was, recognizable enough that it was there, but not in your face. It wasn't like throwing Gene Hackman at you. It wasn't dumping Gene Hackman all over you.
Speaking though of Lowe's, the other one that I really like, but he's not a super big celebrity. He has almost the same stature as what's his name from
Dennis
Allstate.
Haybert.
Yeah. And that is the Home Depot guy, Josh Lucas.
Yeah, I like him too.
From Sweet Home Alabama, which a lot of people know that movie, maybe rom-com with Reese Witherspoon. But his voice is very distinct. I like his voice, and his for Home Depot, I think, is actually better than Gene Hackman's for Lowe's for whatever reason.
But yeah, Josh Lucas did it for a while, and you would know the voice if you heard it.
Yeah. Sadly, we picked all men.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Maybe it's my own bias coming through here, or the bias of the ad industry or society as a whole. I just feel like I couldn't find anything that was super iconic or long-term, as we talked about some of these things. Interesting to me to just notice. I'm like, wow, these are all middle-aged or, kind of a little older men that are just repeatedly coming up or doing a lot of brand voice associations.
But I don't know. I think that's a great list. Ones that maybe make you think a little bit about this idea of using a very recognizable voice for your brand, right? Not everybody can afford this like small business, but when you hear these brands, think about what that does to you. In some part of your brain, you are thinking, I now have a connection to that brand because I've had a connection with that voice in some way, whether it was through movies or whatever.
Yeah. And that can even be a good starting point, even if you're not a brand that can afford a celebrity or something, but to think if we were to get a celebrity, who would it be? And kind of developing some of your stuff from there. Even when I sometimes will create content for a brand, sometimes I will try to personify that brand as like, what actor would this be? I think that's a good thing to also think about with kind of voiceover. You can get a sense of what kind of person would you be looking for? Would you be looking for somebody with calm, a soft voice? Would you be looking for somebody who's more authoritative? And if you think of that in terms of familiar celebrities, maybe that can set you on the path of where you're trying to go with your voiceover.
That's a great takeaway. Also, you can just have a generative AI replicate that. You want Morgan Freeman to voice your brand. I'm just kidding, by the way. Don't do that.
Absolutely do not.
Do not do that. But you're going to hear about it a lot if you haven't already.
When it's like, wow, Morgan Freeman's really voicing every brand now. That's weird. Dave's used car lot?
Ving Rhames again?
Ving.
It could be like a shoe brand. We have the feets.
Arby's, we have the meats.
What would they say for a vegetable market?
We have the beets.
There you go.
We have the meats.
Yeah.
That could also be an electronics store or some sort of musical.
Oh, yeah. It could be anything. A game store, video games. We have the cheats. It's a stretch on that one.
We could do this all day. What about a linen store?
We have the sheets.
Somebody's already using that. That's actually copyright.
Yeah, it's true. Could also be for the gas station. We have the sheets.
We are the sheets.
You are sheets. That's pretty amazing. So we hope you got a lot out of today with our nuggets of human wisdom, if you will, and some voiceover lists for you to ponder.
Yeah, chew on for a little bit.
Yeah, just like meats. You could chew on them. Well, that's it for today's episode, everyone. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast on speakinghuman.com.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans.
Speaking human.